Okay, so we're live. And hello and welcome to the High Performance Leadership Series powered by Atlassian and Accelerate. I'm Shane Gallen, Director of Enterprise Solutions at Accelerate, and today Gail and I are delighted to welcome Tiankai Feng onto the series. So Tiankai is the Data and AI Strategy Director at ThoughtWorks, author of Humanizing Data Strategy. He's a TEDx speaker. He's also a data musician and really is an inspirational force of nature, transforming raw data into creative, impactful insights and blending the arts and science of AI in ways that really define what's possible. So over the next 45 minutes, Tankai will be sharing his experience, insights, and passion for leading data with both the head and the heart. So we're going to be covering the intersection of data, AI, and humanity, data narratives, turning numbers into stories that drive growth, the art and the science of AI and data innovation. And we'll be taking a bit of a future focus as well. Over to you, Gail.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction. So thank you so much for inviting me. So I will be co-hosting with Shane. I'm working in Decathlon, and actually I'm working on data strategy and data architecture. And it happens that while doing so, I'm like reading extensively your book, Tiankai, and using part of it everywhere in my data strategy.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm really honored.
So hello, Tiankai.
Hello.
Welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have this discussion with you.
hmm
Maybe you would like to present with your own words yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I usually say that I'm a data leader at day and I'm a musician at night and I'm an optimist at heart. Because that's basically the three things that define me nowadays. So I am working as a data and AI strategy director at ThoughtWorks right now, a consultancy that focuses on data and tech solutions. And I basically was always passionate about the human side of data along my 12 years of working in it. And the reason why that is because I realized that most of the issues and failures in data are rooted in human factors, right? Like lack of knowledge, misaligned decisions, unevenly distributed expertise, and all of these basically lead to things going wrong. And I wanted to basically address that and put more focus on the human beings rather than seeing it as a weakness or as like a wild card, right? And yeah, I did that like along all of my career. I started as a marketing analyst, then I became a BI analyst. I was a capability lead. I was a data product owner myself, and then I switched to data governance, data strategy, and now I'm basically doing it also more as a leader and basically helping senior leaders to solve these kind of issues. Yeah, I also like to apply my musical skills to topics around data as well. So I make some parodies about things. I write my original songs about it. Anything that makes data a little bit more fun and approachable, basically. So yeah, that's me.
Cool. So you have a very extensive journey in data and AI. And
Yes.
I can see that one important thing for you is really the creative insight and blending that into the data strategy and the business strategy that you do, right?
Right. hmm
Cool. That's great. And what inspired you in your journey to write Humanizing Data Strategy?
Yeah. So, I mean, I mentioned before, right? Because most of the issues that I realized in data are rooted in human factors, but at the same time, I had the feeling that there were not many people talking about it or writing about it, right? There are some good books about it already, that are addressing the human side of data, but not too much if you compare it to the rest of it, which are much more technically focused, right? Like on specific technologies or specific hard skill sets that people have. And I kind of just didn't want to leave it as an abstract topic, but put something more practical and inspirational out there to really address the human side of data with some concrete actions. So that's how I basically came up with the book and with kind of the focus on it. And yeah, since it's called Humanizing Data Strategy, I also wanted to make sure that it's readable by human beings, right? Which is why it's not that long either, right? So it's a little bit more written conversationally. And also, I'm trying to keep it like a nice conversation, right? Like everything is written in a way that's hopefully still easily to understood, but also from a flow point of view, very easy to read through.
Yeah, it's true. It's really easy to read. And I feel there is a lot of culture in it,
hmm
a lot of
Right.
philosophy. Is it something you put in place into your work as well?
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, in the end, we all interact with people in our day to day, right? And I always say you can either unconsciously or consciously deal with people, right? And I choose to be conscious about every interaction I have, right? By really be a good listener, be an active listener, be an empath, understand the other person's needs and what their ambitions to really have a nice interaction and a nice collaboration and not deal with it just because I have to, right? So in that way, I think this is a culture that I would like to have, and I'm actively promoting that kind of culture, right? But I also think it's the right thing to do as a human being, right? That in the end, we all leaving an impact on each other by how we make each other feel. So why not choose to leave a good impact and be someone people like to hang out with, and not just someone who's a colleague, so to say, right?
And Tiankai, so just listening to, those issues that you're talking about, really rooted in different human factors and that focus on, active listening, understanding different needs and really being more human in that space. As we think
Mhm.
about the intersection of data, AI, and humanity, um, your concept of humanizing data strategy really is compelling. So what does humanizing data, mean in practical terms for organizations today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole, in a nutshell, the whole point of humanizing data really means to shift the focus on human beings as the main actors and decision makers around data again, right? And it's not the technologies and not the processes around it that is defining how data is being turned into value. It's actually human beings who are thinking, deciding, and acting on it to make it happen, right? And that means to put them all in focus again. And basically, in my book, I come up with this framework of the 5 Cs, right, which are competence, collaboration, communication, creativity, and conscience. And these, I believe, are all skills that we as human beings all have, right? These are things that we all are doing in our day to day already, or applying in our day to day, but we just can apply them more in the data space specifically, and thereby hopefully understand each other, but also put the right environment out there for people to strive in data environments and AI environments to do the right thing, basically.
Yeah, humans definitely they are the main actors in this space, and that's having that confidence, and the real focus on collaboration, the creativity, and the consciousness that we bring, um, and especially in an increasingly data-driven world, how
Hmm.
can companies ensure that they're not losing the human touch in their decision-making processes?
Yeah. Uh, well, I mean, very easily speaking is that we shouldn't hide behind technology, right? Because that takes away from the human factor of it. And what I mean by that is we could also just spend time only emailing and writing Jira tickets and writing comments on the Jira tickets to communicate, but that's probably not the most human way of doing it, right? Sometimes it's much better just to have a 5 minute conversation, talking face to face about something than endless email chains or Teams messages that are only answered 4 hours later or something, right? And it starts really with that human communication, right? How we interact with each other, how we communicate with each other is the very first step. And even then, when we then think about solutions and bigger architecture strategy topics, it's still towards certain people that are benefiting from it, both external customers as well as internal customers, right? And we should keep their needs and their problem solutions in mind, right? We're always creating like new solutions, but they're there to solve problems, right? But those problems are human problems. They need to finish a task, they need to do something with something, right? So we can even apply design thinking, more human-centered approaches there. And lastly, I would say it's about the human conscience, right? So really that point about governance, compliance, all these things. I feel a lot in today's world is about compliance, and that's for me always the reactive part of it, right? Somewhere on union level or on regional level, you have regulations, and we all reactively try to follow them, right? But if we would proactively already address the right things and we would think about what human beings might be getting disadvantaged from, or what kind of risks we're taking for human beings or society, then we might proactively already do the right thing without having to be surprised then by regulations, because then we already knew it would happen anyway, right? And we were already on the right side of history. So even to make the right choices and apply critical thinking, I think is a really key point to basically leave the human being in the equation.
It's definitely hard to beat those face-to-face interactions, and especially as we get into this space where we're seeing a lot of AI, a lot of agents, and
Hmm.
things really becoming even more um,
Exactly.
more prone to maybe losing that human touch. Um, just for anybody joining the session, please feel free to jump into the comments section and let us know where you're joining from. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to leave them in there as well. Um, Perfect. So, Tiankai, how do you really balance upskilling a diverse workforce with the different learning needs and personal goals so that you can create the capacity for training and learning?
Yeah. I mean, I think on the one hand side, it's really starting about mindset, right? Because for people to actually upskill and learn, they need to want to learn and get upskilled, right? And I think that is a whole attitude thing on how we hire and nurture the right people in the right culture, right? Because there will probably always be some people who think, okay, this is now the job that I will do forever, and I will never have to learn anything else. I will just do my a 9 to 5 job, and I will always do the same manual Excel file for the rest of my life. But I don't think that's even an option anymore in the future, right? Because many of those manual operational tasks will all be automated by AI or other more advanced methods. The only way left is to get upskilled and continue to be like a segue between different technologies and to be a translator and bridge between human mindset and actually technology, right? And that requires all of us to be upskilled, especially because the market is changing every day, right? Like every day there's a new model and a new algorithm and a new risk. So we cannot really afford to not do it. But once that is that, right, then organization needs to provide the right environment to do so too, right? And that means, for example, have the right upskilling portfolio, right? Like an academy concept, for example, where you can actually give different people with different levels of knowledge the right tailored kind of approach of what to learn so that they can upskill themselves. But also for people then to put the learned theory into practice, right? By allowing basically experimentation, allowing to try out things, giving people tasks that are not in their job description necessarily to basically try out the things they learned and then put into action. And then finally, reward people for actually doing more than they're supposed to, right? And that means like kind of a career culture or kind of a rotation between different departments to allow people to actually learn it and apply it and then actually grow because of it. I think those are really the key things.
Yeah, something that you said, and that also, I mean, that resonates a lot with me, is that in our complex environment, sometimes we must try things in order to learn, right?
Right,
And this is
exactly.
something that is a bit different from what the jobs we used to do 10 years ago, for sure.
Yeah,
There
for
is
sure.
no more test environment, right? We need
Yeah,
to put into production directly
yeah, that's true.
our ideas.
Yeah.
One question that I had, and as I'm working on the data strategy myself, like operationally,
Hmm.
I was wondering, would you have some must-haves in order to implement your idea, your culture, and in general, in order to operationalize a data strategy?
Yeah. I think generally speaking, I don't like when data strategies are like 300-page documents that are sitting somewhere on a SharePoint that nobody ever reads, right? It's just, we have a strategy now, and that it will just gain dust and no one will ever open it. It needs to be actionable and implementable, right? And that means it has to be a little bit more directional rather than too detailed of an instruction document, right? It should be just, there are certain principles we need to have to actually do it rather than every step by step, every day, what you should do. Because things are changing too quickly, and we know that based on different changes, we cannot always have a new strategy just because things are changing, right? The other thing I would say is exactly to have incremental changes and rather than a big bang approach to a strategy, which means it's much more about seeing where we're having the most issues and where we can grow still the most, and then focus on these to incrementally, step by step, make it better. And to do that best in a truly humanizing way is to find champions for it, right? So those that we think already are role models that are behaving and role modeling the right way of collaborating or growing, right? And basically turn them into success use cases, right? To say, look, we want to make our data strategy better now. Here are a few examples who are already doing it in the right way. Let's learn from them. Let's learn about how they did it. And now let's roll it out to everywhere else in different departments, different teams, different projects as well, right? And I think with a must-have I got asked a few times which one is the most important C of the five C's. I would actually say collaboration is really the foundation of it all, right?
Okay.
Because ideally you start with collaboration and all the other four C's come from it anyway. Because once you get to know each other and you work on similar objectives, you realize that you need to grow more, you need to communicate better, you need to be creative, and you need to have a conscience to do it, right? And so I would always say wherever I think collaboration is the one thing we cannot miss. So let's build on it, right? We know that we cannot do anything in data anymore without the collaboration. So let's identify where collaboration is most critical and then build an operationalized data strategy on it.
Mm. I like what you said about champions.
Yeah,
What I would say is that tomorrow, the top-down approach might not work anymore. Like
right.
we need to onboard teammates, right?
Exactly.
What would be the practical steps that a leader could use in order to really make their team, translate data into stories, like kind of, understanding a bit your book without reading it, but still being involved into this transformation?
Absolutely. I think that actually comes down to going out of the comfort zone of only data expertise to also have business expertise, right? I mentioned that also in the book where I feel like data literacy is very one-sided, right? Where if we expect all the business stakeholders just to learn the language of data, and that creates an excuse for data professionals to just sit back and wait until everyone else has data literacy and then say, now we can work together because you speak my language. But we cannot afford that anymore, right? We need data people to also understand their business counterparts so they can actually work together and speak the same language. So I would say any data team leader, right? It's never too late to start letting your team members understand how the business works too, right? And you can only then bridge it from data efforts to actual business value by understanding how business processes, business decisions are being made and then see where data fits into all of this and how to make it work. So yeah, I think creating that environment and encouragement to say, understand your audience, understand your collaborators, then you will collaborate and communicate better with them is really key.
Mm.
Thank
And
I.
if
Sorry, Gail. There's a question in the comments actually that
Right.
that touches on what you're just talking about there, the encouragement piece, and it's actually thinking. So it's from Neil Martin, and Neil's asking, thinking about a musical analogy. It takes two to tango. How do we
Yes, I love it. Mhm.
how do we encourage technical and non-technical teams to want to talk to each other? She talked a bit about encouragement there in your last answer.
Yeah. I would say in a very straightforward answer, find common ground is the number one rule, right? Because it's so easy to focus on the differences nowadays. You would notice it in conversations where the data people talk about the business as the others, and the business people talk about the data people, and then it's also the others. It's like basically you're excluding yourself by saying it this way, right? But if you think about what you have in common rather than only what you have different, then ideally you find somewhere to get together. Best case scenario, you have even common objectives, right? To say we are all working for the same company and our business goal is to make more and more revenue through this specific sales channel. You are working in that sales channel. I have all the data and the analytics skills for the sales channel. Let's create that growth together, right? Simply put. And once you have that common goal, everything else comes naturally, right? We both want to achieve it. So why should it stop us, right? We want to do the same thing. We each contribute to it in different ways and we can formally commit to it to actually get there. So I would say, right, find that common ground, find that common objective, and then people will automatically talk more to each other.
so the common goal is something that is really, really important.
Hmm.
It's true. And sometimes it's also hard to find, especially transversely with a lot of teammates involved
Yes.
into one one business decision or one business strategy. Um, do you have an example that could be a bit concrete of how you change data narrative in order to really like make a business decision or implement a strategy?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I had this one situation where really it was hard to sell data governance, right? Data governance is always the abstract thing and it has a lot of misconceptions around it, right? We all know about it. But I knew that from a business stakeholder that was working in sales, that a certain amount of people that were working in B2B sales were basically manually correcting data to actually then have the right catalog for B2B customers to buy the products, which cost like a few hours of 5 people every month to clean the data, which was a waste of money, right? Because the error just kept appearing. There was always the same errors. They were just never fixed at the source. So basically, we then shifted to say, okay, let's apply data governance here, but let's not call it data governance for now, because otherwise people are going to resist again. Let's just see where the problem comes from, solve it there, create some accountability, and then we can say afterwards, surprise, right? And this is what we did, right? We basically said, okay, let's trace back where the issue comes from. It comes from the source system and specific people putting manual wrong data in, but they didn't even know that this was the requirement. So we kind of connected the dots. They started changing and putting correct data in after a few months, and also then consistently. Then the manual efforts decreased, and then at the end we could say, surprise, we did data governance the whole time. Now you know how it works, right? So, but it's a little bit that finding that loophole to say, okay, we can't always call out things for everything they are, but sometimes it's easier to not call things certain ways, and knowing that certain things are negatively triggering people while other things are positively triggering people, to then find the path of least resistance, right? And then you get something done, and nobody can deny a success story, right? Then you can always attach anything to the success story, and then hopefully more people believe in it.
So instead of saying data governance, you said, let's have a drink, right?
Exactly, yes. Which is generally a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. I have heard that about agility before, but never
Right.
data governance.
Let's not call it
But
Agile, right? Let's just do
yes.
something and then surprise, we did Agile the whole time. Yeah, exactly. Good
Cool.
one.
Thank you so much. I'm taking notes, and this is what I will write, and this is
Okay,
probably what I will
perfect.
apply directly.
Awesome.
I have to say that that focus on what success is, so where are we in the future, and just finding that path of least resistance. Yeah, it's a really key point. And like Gail, I'm taking some notes today. Um, and
Nice.
and in particular, you know, personal branding is really important. So whenever I suppose when we think about that, how do you stay so creative and personally brand yourself?
Yeah. I mean, there's actually something I like to talk about, but I don't often say. I don't really have a plan for my personal brand, right? I know that a lot of people are saying to create a personal brand, first define your own brand vision, who you want to be, how you want to be perceived, etc., etc. I never had that kind of structured approach to it, but I always knew that if I can communicate more the way I want to, and if I gain some positive feedback by it, and I'm perceived in a different way, then it will break the ice with my stakeholders. And it's always easier if the other side has already a good impression of you rather than none, right? Because then they already know something about you and you can easily go to a conversation, and maybe you will switch easily from small talk to a business conversation on a good note. And you can jump over that awkward getting to know each other first, and so on and so on. And I mean, in other notes, though, I also realized that in the world of everyone having an opinion nowadays, if you are unknown and you don't have opinions about things, then that will negatively impact your perception too, right? Because if you don't tell your own story, then people will tell a story on your behalf, right? And they will say things about, I don't know anything about the person. I don't know what that person is doing. Or that person is a black box to me. I never hear that person say anything, right? So that will then, in hindsight, actually create a negative impact, even if you didn't want to, even if you just decided to not participate. So in the end, we all have to find a way to kind of tell our own story and position ourselves out there, right? And I don't mean by that everyone needs to become a LinkedIn influencer now. It's more about positioning yourself in the right moments, being authentically yourself. And if you're an introvert, do it in smaller groups, right? Just do one-on-ones with specific people. And you don't have to go to every town hall to present. It's more about create that network, build your image, and do it the way how you feel is authentic. And don't be afraid to experiment, right? As long as you're not offending anyone, there's really not a lot of wrong things you can do, right? So just try to be yourself and be unique. Yeah.
I really like that focus on just being your authentic self, especially when you've got a passion that comes alongside that, and when
Yeah.
that's leading to something that is truly impactful. Um, the dots kind of join themselves. And,
Right.
and also like what you're touching on there, that it's almost like being the best kept secret.
Yeah.
Uh, you're not really going to be noticed unless you're talking and interacting. And I really like a couple of different nice strategies there, depending on how you want to approach it.
Mm.
Yeah. And personal branding's key, right? So everybody's going to be having different interactions with you, and based on that interaction, they'll be, well, whether we like it or not, making their own story up about who you are as a person in each of those
Right.
interactions. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I feel that, but maybe I'm wrong, but let me know. I feel that also you are leading a lot with your own values, like putting your own values into the work, right? So this is kind of the guide for your personal branding at the end of the day, right?
That
So
is true.
that's also,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, from the book, we can directly read that you ask yourself
Fair.
a lot of questions,
Yeah.
questions that you might ask when you are not so focused into values and how can I also be a leader, I would say.
Right.
So
Yes.
yeah, I would completely agree that at least it makes your brand very authentic then.
Yeah. That's a really good point because I had that conflict type multiple times in my career where I wanted to really make a collaboration work with a certain person, right? And let's say a leader would tell me, just escalate it, right? Just talk to their person, the boss of that person, and force it, and then you will get the collaboration. But in my head, I always thought if I do that, it will only work once, and that person will hate me forever, and I will never be able to recover from that kind of attitude, right? But if I can spend just a little bit more time, actually find common ground and solve it on our level, and we actually understand each other, then it's a sustaining collaboration because it started in trust, right? And not in distrust. So in the end, I did it every time I did it my way. And although it took a little bit of time and we got delayed a little bit, at least I felt good better about myself because then I knew I have turned a detractor into a promoter almost, right? And I actually made a collaboration work and I didn't have to escalate. And now we can long term, hopefully, work together better, right? And this is what I say about value, exactly your point, right? Why do I need to escalate everything? Because then I look like a bad person, right? I create someone's trust, but if I don't have to destroy the trust with someone, why should I choose to do it just to be faster, right? It's a little bit of a tricky thing, but then I just stand up for my values and try to do the right thing.
It's definitely that there'll be a struggle with you being your authentic self as well. In those
Yeah,
moments, it's not you, so that's always going to be noticeable.
true.
Yeah. So definitely part of your brand is there's a musical thread in there,
Hmm.
for sure. And so as a proclaimed data musician, how do you infuse creativity into data strategy and AI projects?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about creativity is exactly because I'm a musician myself. I write songs and produce songs and so on. It's kind of in my muscle to already have that creative habit in me. But I believe that anyone has creativity in them, right? People might be hard to admit it themselves that they can be creative because they work in an analytical job like in data. But in the end, we all have ideas, right? We all have sometimes that spark of a genius to say, oh, what about this? Or maybe we should try this. And it's more about channeling it, right? So in my book, I also talk about the difference between spontaneous creativity and solution-driven creativity, right? Where basically the solution-driven one is the easy one to start with, right? You have a problem in front of you, and now you want to come up with a solution that hasn't been done before. So you get creative, right? And the more you start identifying issues that you can create it from, the more it becomes a habit. And the more you have the habit, the more spontaneous your creativity comes too. And this is how I can infuse it. For me, being a musician, right, has a lot of that thing of how do I actually translate something complex into easier lyrics, right? And by that I mean narratives. And I think I do that a lot by where I try to talk about something very complicated through an analogy or a metaphor or like some rhyming, right, to make it more work. And that is actually really nice because through music, the other thing is that it addresses the emotional side of people and not just the rational side, right? Because music is a language that everyone speaks. And if we all think about what can emotionally be more rewarding than just rationally giving us a satisfaction, right? Then maybe that changes how we communicate as well. Maybe it's rather having drinks than talking about data governance in a meeting, right? But either way, you can kind of do it maybe this way a bit better. Right.
Yeah, I definitely I felt the positive emotive side of your data song from your TEDx conference. There's
Thanks.
definitely a lot of positive emotion there in terms of what the future holds and how humans are involved in that. So folks, just noticed a few more people joining. If you are joining, please feel free to drop a question into the comments. Let us know where you're joining from, and we'll try to answer those questions. So, moving on, like how can organizations foster an environment where the art and science of data coexists to spark innovation?
Yeah. I mean, so basically, right, it starts first, I think, with the same as I mentioned before about growth and upskilling. You need to have the willingness to be creative first, right? So if you decide today, I want to be more creative at my job, then ideally that creates more opportunities to be creative anyway, because you see the opportunities to be creative as well, right? But then we also need to have the right environment. And a lot of things about creativity is that not all ideas are going to work, right? They might have sounded all great in your head, but once you put them out there, there's something you haven't considered and the idea doesn't work out. But we cannot punish people for trying out new ideas, right? Because then that destroys creativity itself. Because then instead of failing with my ideas, I'd rather have no ideas, and then you just stop all innovation, basically. So having that failure culture or like an experimental culture where you can experiment but also fail with the experiment is really important. And that has to happen culturally in teams and in organizations, right? And lastly, getting acknowledged and rewarded for great ideas, right? If you put them into practice, they actually work. This is something you can then roll out and scale out to different parts of the organization. Then this is something people should get acknowledged for, right? And then you create actually a nurturing, kind of encouraging kind of environment where people are all asked to be creative and have new ideas. And then you drive up innovation overall because everyone wants to have great ideas then. And they all want to actually innovate proactively rather than just being forced.
There's definitely similarities there between a group of musicians coming together and jam,
Yes, a
and
jam session.
you're kind
Exactly.
of jamming. You know what I mean? And things don't sound always right, but when you get it and you kind of build on top of that, and it's okay to make mistakes in that type of space.
Perfect. I love that analogy, what you're saying, because in a jam session, the dynamic is also that everyone gets a turn, right? That
Mhm.
there's always one person who's improvising and the other one is playing the background rhythm and kind of background music, but
Mm.
everyone gets a turn in a jam session. So that is how a nice culture also works, right? It's not always one person that is taking the lead on everything. Everyone should get the turn, and we should all respect each other to give each other turns to be innovative and having new ideas too, and then turning them into action because in the end we're all unique, right? And we all have unique ideas to hopefully drive something forward.
And I loved when you say about personal branding that sometimes maybe you could be an introvert. And
Exactly.
that for me is like everybody is going to lead a different way, right?
Exactly.
And an organization should recognize that different people lead different way, and it's okay and it's great to have such a diversity and not only push leaders that are leading in a traditional way, right?
Right. Exactly.
This
Yeah.
is something very cool. That's great. We wanted to talk a bit more about the future,
hmm
and in particular, in the company where I currently work, sustainability is something that is very important. So we have tried on our side to think a bit about sustainability in the IT. And so far, there are not that many things out there to discuss that, especially with AI. I was wondering, as you put a lot of emphasis on humanity within your book,
hmm
did you already discuss or thought about sustainability in the data strategy and how it could really be shaped? Is it your next book?
Nice angle. Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I think this is the thing also about having conscience, right? Because to be able to apply our critical thinking to consider things like sustainability, we need to know about the impact we have on the environment too, right? And I think the ones that we, as a whole society right now, our community don't talk about often enough, I feel like, if we are starting to apply AI everywhere, this is going to be massive of an energy consumption, right? Because every computation and every processing of a prompt is much more expensive in terms of energy than just doing it in much simpler ways. And if we can solve problems without AI and can do it in a much more effective and efficient way, then we should do that because using AI to basically solve a very small problem that wouldn't cost you that much to solve anyway is then wasting actually resources and having a negative impact on an environment. Yeah, and this having said, it's if we don't know about it, then we cannot consider it in our kind of things, right? I'm really glad to hear that in your organization sustainability is a priority because that means you have sustainability experts there that are shining light on it. But unfortunately, in various organizations and industries, I'm seeing that sustainability is not as important anymore, right? And we hear from the US that DEI, for example, is also not as important anymore, right? So if you then remove experts from those spaces, then it's just natural that it's not being considered anymore. And that makes us blind on those spots, right? So we don't consider them anymore and we only see basically making more money out of it and doing things faster, but we don't consider the impact that we have on the environment. So
Yeah.
what I believe is important, right, is really just keeping the right experts in, trying to keep the expertise up to speed and having cross-functional decisions with those experts to actually make the right choice.
So we have the chance on our side to be a sports retail company. And so the people who do sport are usually quite aware about nature, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So this is, I think, why our customer base is really interested in having products that are sustainable. And from the IT perspective, I mean, it's also hard to realize what is exactly your impact, how to measure it on the, like, imagine we say AI is optimizing a lot of processes, then maybe it could be less consuming of time and of, but at the same time, I mean, we need to have a holistic measure. And this is going to be very complex, right?
Right, yes. I understand. Yeah, absolutely. That is true.
I was wondering if today, as a leader, you would like to create or write a data strategy, including sustainability right now, like knowing everything that we don't know about sustainability, right? And maybe this leader is me. Maybe I am asking the question.
You're asking for a friend, right? I know, yeah. Yeah.
So what advice would you give this leader or me
Yeah.
to write something like now that could be human-centric and that could think about the future as well of our humanity, basically?
Yeah. If I would describe it in a catchphrase almost, right, is that the fastest way is not always the right way, is what I would say it. And how we define what is right could be from different angles, right? As you said, it could be about the human beings that are involved and how much we're asking of them or how much they're being disadvantaged by the fast solution. But it also could be the environment itself, right? Like if we want to do it fast, then that's on the cost of burning so many light bulbs, for example, right, for something. But whereas if we're just a little bit slower, we might actually save the planet in the long run, and we don't have to do it this way, right? So let's not only aim for fast and maximum, but let's also consider what the cost is, right? And the cost is not only money, the cost is also society, environment, and everything around it. So yeah, that would be the start, and then we can always go deeper, right, on like what exactly are the things we need to consider and how we should then make the right decisions to be a bit more balanced in our approach.
Yes. And so would you also agree that measuring is great, informing teammates is great, but you also need to communicate, right? Because at the end of the day, your customer base is going also to like these kind of approaches.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. And if they are already advocates for doing the right thing in terms of environment and everything, right, that even better. But if not, then it might be even a chance to upskill them and teach them something about how different technologies have a different environmental footprint, right? And how we need to be more conscious about the choices we make.
Okay, that's really great. I have not seen as many upskilling approach. I know that there are, the climate, we call it fresque in France, where you discuss the impact, the sustainable impact of digital, for example.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for me, the training on AI should have this sustainability part for sure.
Absolutely.
That would be really great. Cool. So if you have one important message, I mean, when we prepared the session, I had one actually, because I really love the way the book is written. So you can really apply some small pieces of wisdom, right, in your daily job. And you can, go deeper and deeper into the understanding of the key messages you try to bring that are very simple, but still have a lot of depth, right?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had some closing thoughts and maybe final words for someone that knows you only from your book, from this discussion. So if you had something else to say, like a key message that you would like to bring.
Wow. That's a great question. I would say that even if we all work in data, data is inherently biased, right? So even if we deal with it and we all treat it as the ultimate source of truth and fact, right? Even by starting to select what we collect as data and then how we apply it and use it, et cetera, all of that are based on human decisions, right? And if we all acknowledge that fact, then it's completely normal that people have different opinions and different emotions towards data. And so it's really key that we just address it, right? And without going too many details into the book or everything, right? If we just also realize that we are human beings who are the only ones who are able to understand other human beings, right? Let's apply that skill and let's then basically deal with data in a better way. Because yeah, I mean, basically, it's also a quote I use in my book, right? People will forget what you said and what you did, but they will not forget how you made them feel. And that is the lasting legacy we leave here. So focus on more how you make people feel, because it will make your life better, it will make everyone else's life better, and it will make data also better in your organization.
That's great. That's really great. And with the existing complexity we have in the job market, for example, this is something we must also remember, even though we are all living a lot of pressure. Yeah. And this is actually something that is not easy to apply, I think, and requires a lot of self listening to.
Absolutely. I can also only say that if you want to prove your soft skills and your way of how human you are in an interview, it's actually paradox, because it doesn't help that you brag about it, right? You actually have to show vulnerability and addressing that you had challenges in the past, how you overcame the challenges, and how you are more reflected about what you're good at and what you're not so good at, because only that makes people actually trust you, right? If you have only answers like, I never had any problems in my career, I never had any resistance in data governance or something like that, then nobody will believe you, right? So you're actively lying, which means people will actually lose the trust. So the key is finding the way to communicate, even in interviews, that you are authentic and that you are trustworthy. And that means also admitting if you don't know things or you have other weaknesses.
Yeah, completely agree with you. It's true that it's a great paradox. You see it on LinkedIn, for example.
Yeah, true. That's true.
You want to show your best self, but sometimes you need to be authentic as well.
Yeah.
This is a fine line that is very hard to find, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, I have learned so many things from our discussion. I've wrote so many stuff.
Thank you so much.
I've also got a list of notes as well, and things to action myself. Thank you. See, before we wrap up, we do have a bit of time, and we've got another question that's come in on the comments from Evelyn. So Evelyn's asking, it's going back to a previous topic of aligning teams around projects. Assuming they are aligned, how do you balance the need to implement innovative AI solutions with the requirement to ensure ethical and responsible use?
Yeah, I mean, ideally speaking, the decision to even give a green light for that project should have considered that already upfront, right? And it shouldn't be actually decided by the people who are implementing. It should have been already considered in the terms of consequences and risks upfront by the leaders that decided that this is a prioritized project. And when you're in that planning mode and we are deciding on what pilots or what kind of experiments you want to do with AI, right? You should have the right experts around there already, right? Like, as we mentioned before, if we look from a sustainability point of view, you might have already sustainability experts around. If it's from a legal point of view, you might have legal experts. If it's an information security point of view, infosec experts, et cetera, et cetera. But try to be and spend a little bit more time holistic on all of the risks that you can foresee at the beginning, and then basically then already take a chance on acceptable risks to then launch your project, ideally under certain guardrails. And then when you actually do the project, and of course there's still going to be unexpected risks that you will have because it's still too much an unknown space in AI. I would say it's about keeping that human in the loop factor, right? So basically, over time, observing what is going on, if everything is going basically on track, or if certain bad feedback came or certain things were broken and they led to certain risks. And then you might need to tweak the guardrails or you tweak again the whole project how we want. But it's really a matter of having the right experts represented on already making the right choices and not first doing it and then regretting later on that you might have done something wrong.
And accepting bad feedbacks sometimes is really hard, especially when
Sure.
you're the one choosing to invest, right?
Absolutely. Exactly. Exactly.
So this is one of the bias you discussed about at the beginning of the session when you said that we are biased as individual.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we invested in already, right? So it must be the right choice, but we all have to then learn that some things are just unexpected, right? And something a good choice can turn out to be a bad choice because we have more information than before. Yeah.
Yes, the information factor is something very important, something you learn also in economics as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can only resonate from the information you have, and any
Exactly.
new information should make you consider a new whole, maybe a new. I don't think I find my word, but
Yeah. Oh, good. Understood.
Do you have any other questions, Shane?
I can't see any more questions in the comments. So unless somebody is super quick and they get their question in, I think we'll wrap it up for today. We just got a big thanks from Evelyn.
Great.
So yeah. Perfect, folks. So everybody that's joined virtually, just a big thanks from myself and Accelerates, and a special thanks to our VIP host Gail. And finally, thank you to you as well, Tiankai, for spending time to share your story, your passions, your inspiration. And if you've not already read Tiankai's book, Humanizing Data Strategy, I'll share a link in the comments. Definitely check it out. It's worth a read for sure. And as Gail's talking about, like really just not reading it, but really getting your hands on with the book in your daily life. So folks, that's a thanks from us all here. And if you're not already doing it, please follow Accelerate on LinkedIn. Your support really means more than we can put into words. We've got a number of series, or sorry, episodes in the series coming up over the next month, and moving into June and July. We've got Derek Smith coming up on Tuesday. So Derek's going to be talking about building a digital first financial ecosystem. So that's next Tuesday. And I'll share a link in the comments as well. Thanks, Tiankai. Thanks, Gil.
Thanks. That was fun.
Okay.
It was
really
for sure.
fun to interview you, especially.
Yeah. Thank you
Guys,
so much.
Yes, read the book, apply the book, make data better.
Great.